So make sure that you've got a couple of blankets or thick towels. And we're also going to use a strap for today. So I have a yoga strap, but if you don't have one at home, you could go ahead and grab a belt, like a regular belt or the belt of a bathrobe. If you don't have that, you could even just use a scarf that you can tie into a knot, whatever you have handy. And if you don't have it, it's not the end of the world, but we'll do our best. So we're going to focus today on moving in a way that supports us for the week ahead. So a lot of us are spending a lot of time sitting in our desks, and then maybe if you are isolating in your home or with the weather changing as well, I think more and more people are finding themselves sedentary. So we're going to try and break up some of those adhesions that may have been kind of creating some aches and pains and lack of movement today in a really a dynamic way. So I'd like to get started first seated. So I'm going to come to sit right up high on these blankets, ideally finding yourself seated with your hips higher than your knees. So I've got my 2 blankets stacked here. I'll sit sideways for a moment just so that I can further demonstrate before I spin around here and practice. You could have your feet together, your knees open, your legs crossed, your legs straight ahead. And then I encourage you maybe to try something that you don't, to try a way of sitting that you don't normally sit. So if you usually tuck the right leg up in front of the left, even something as simple as changing to left leg tucked in front of right, it'll feel a little funny at first, but that's okay, as long as there's no pain. And then once you're there, be conscious that you're not sitting back onto your tailbone and creating this kind of curved shape. So what I'll invite you to do is use the height of your hips to really shift the seat back a little bit. And sometimes I'll even lean way forward and shift my seat back, like as though somebody's lifting me up from underneath, and then coming to sit in this position so that it feels more like you're sitting on the tops of your thighs, where the thigh connects to the bottom of your seat, than at the top of your seat. So we're going to free up the whole low back here. And if you're feeling any sensations of strain or pulling in the knees here, or if it's a big sensation, like more than 6 out of 10 in terms of sensation in the hips, it's a great idea to bring something underneath your thighs or under your knees to provide additional support as well, because we're sitting so high up. So in this place, we're really primed to start to move the pelvis on top of the thighs. So the leg bones plugging into the hip sockets, we're going to focus on the crease there where the leg bones plugs into the hip socket, and try to keep your spine relatively neutral. So for me, a neutral spine is one that feels like my whole back has the same amount of effort. So from the very top of my head to the tip of my tail is working to the same degree. There's almost a sense of tone. If you reach very slightly, like the width of a piece of paper, pressing up through the roof of the mouth, pressing up through the top of the head, you might get a sense of how far your tone follows. So if I push up in that way, I can feel the stretch, a little very slight elongation moving all the way down my spine. If you imagine that somebody places heavy books onto your head, the weight should fall into the seat, into your sitting bones, right where the leg plugs into the hip socket. If I were out of this neutral spine and you placed books on my head, the weight's going to fall on the first curvature that it meets. So it's going to fall behind my shoulders or fall behind my neck. So try to find as neutral a spine as you can and maintain that as you start to circle your pelvis on top of the legs. So we're not tucking the tail or lifting the tail. You're kind of staying up tall and just circling around. And it's curious, how far can you lean forward, to the side, to the back, and the other side while maintaining a neutral spine? So as you come forward, the temptation will be to tuck your tail or round your chest right behind your heart. As you lean to the side, a lot of people will collapse onto that right side or onto the side they're leaning on. As you lean to the back, people might curve themselves around. And as you lean to the other side, same thing, will collapse to the other side. So try to intend that the spine stays in this neutral shape. Let's change directions of the circling now, so that most of the sensation, if not all of the sensation that you're feeling, is centered around those hip creases. Moving slow enough that you can really connect to where you might be coming out of neutrality, or which areas of your circle you might be skipping or missing. And once you've done that a couple of times in both directions, we'll come back to center, reconnect to this neutral spine for a breath or two. And not only does the neutral spine or the global tone help us to develop a real internal strength from the inside out, a strength in every part of our body, of our torso, but it also creates the most amount of room or capacity or potential for breath. So if I were out of this neutral spine, I'm really limiting where and how much I can take into my lungs. Whereas in this neutral shape, I've got capacity in the fronts of my lungs, up to my chest, through my sides, and into my back. And it's incredible, not only as you inflate these huge organs, we can get so much support to maintain this neutral spine. But we also supply our internal selves with the most potential for health and wellness, oxygenate the blood, oxygen to the brain, circulatory system. So many of our body's functions rely on this sort of thing that we do all day that we just take for granted. We don't always even notice that we're doing, but you're here, so I guarantee you breathe all day. So we'll stay strengthening this neutral spine shape for just another breath or two. Try to relax your arms as heavy as you can so they're just hanging from the shoulder sockets. When you're able to support your spine in this neutral shape, there's no need to lift yourself up through the shoulders. And then we're going to continue to explore the mobility of this space. If you want to slowly make your way out of the shape you're in, and grab your strap and your blankets, and we're going to transition onto the back. So as you make your way onto your back, just clear some space for you to come to lie flat first. Taking a couple of breaths here to notice what's happening in the internal environment of your body. Where do you feel spacious and where do you feel compressed? So for a lot of people, having the legs straight out like this when they're lying on their back can create a lot of strain in the low back. So regardless of that, what you're feeling, what I'd like for you to do is bend your knees and step the soles of your feet to the mat, and then experience what that feels like in your body, the difference between legs straight and knees bent. And then let's take it one step further. I'd like you to roll over to the side, take your hand along your seat, and very gently lift your seat, the top of your seat, towards your ribs, just a tiny bit, and roll back. And then lift your just a little bit towards your ribs. So when you come to lie back onto your spine, you're going to notice that little bit of an arch in your low back. So what we're doing here is we're recreating the conditions of a neutral spine. And the weight of the body now is resting right on the sacrum, on the bridge or the flat spot right at the top of your seat, where the round part of your seat becomes the flat part of your lowest low back. That's the space that you want to rest your weight upon, because in doing so, the pelvis is in neutral. For some of us, it might feel as though your head is dropping back. So you might be looking towards where the wall meets the ceiling above you, or even the wall behind you. And if that's the case, lifting your head and either interlacing fingers behind the head to act as a little pillow, or if you tend to experience shoulder or neck pain, then you can use your folded blanket underneath your head instead. So here we all are in your version of this shape. Experiment with stepping your feet closer to your bum, further away, wider and closer to each other. And then find for yourself the space where it feels as though your feet can be firmly rooted in the floor. So one of the ways that I like to do this is to lift all 10 toes, just the toes, not the balls of the feet, so my ankles don't move. I just lift my toes. And here I can feel or locate the ball of the big toe, and all the way out to the ball of the pinky toe, and then all the way back to the center of both heels. So I've got this visual and imaginary triangle on the bottom of my feet. Lowering the toes back to the floor, I'd like you to still try to equalize your weight across this triangle. So can you share the amount of load or of weight of your legs through the ball of the big toe, ball of the pinky toe, and the center of your heel? And it's interesting to note that in our subtle bodies, the ball of the foot can be symbolic of the future, the heel of the foot of the past. So where you land on your foot might give you some insight as to where your mind is in this moment. Sharing the weight between all 3 points to really try to embody the sense of being present. Now from here, we're going to tilt your tail. So take your arms to 90 degrees. You're going to look like a little robot with your elbows on the floor and your palms or your fingertips facing the ceiling. Arms wherever they feel most strong. So wherever you feel, elbows close or far away, wherever you feel like you have the most amount of power. You're going to take your tailbone and tilt it towards your knees. So now we're getting lots of length in the front of the hips. And then that's all we're doing. Then take that tailbone and tilt it towards the heels and the floor. So back to that like arch shape. And maybe even folding a little further if it doesn't create any strain in your back. Engage the front of your body, compressing and pulling the belly button in to help lift the tail and tilt it to the knees, and then compressing the back of your body like a little accordion, folding backwards to bring your bum higher and higher up your back. Tilting the tail towards your knees. This time, imagine pushing your knees away from your body while you tilt. Keeping the feet where they are. Roll back down, do the opposite. So now we're crisply folding, and imagine tucking your knees to your chest here. So now the thighs are helping to create even more mobility here. Now let's follow that line and peel each individual vertebra as though you could do so one at a time off the floor. And the higher you lift, the more you're pushing into your arms and sending your knees away from your body. And then roll down from the very top. Feel the floor connecting to the topmost vertebra, one at a time, vertebrae by vertebrae. Really arc that back under so that the tail doesn't touch before the mid back or the low back. Now we're going to do that again, but this time I'll invite you to take your strap and strap your thighs where they are. So if there's a big space between your thighs, that's fine. Keep that space. If there's no space between your thighs, that's also fine. You're going to keep your legs exactly where they are, but now we've got the strap pretty tight, a snug around, so it shouldn't be pulling your legs in. It's kind of just holding them where they are, around your mid thigh or a little bit closer to your knee if you'd rather. Make sure that you're tightening that belt or tying that scarf so that you can push out to the edges of the strap and it's not going to move. So we're adding more and more points of contact here, more and more ability or potential for you to engage slightly. So here we are resting down, feeling into the triangles of your feet. Allow yourself to breathe here. Bend your elbows to 90 degrees. Keeping all of those elements, we're going to tilt the tail, and as you roll up, push the thighs out against the strap and peel off the ground one vertebra at a time. Push back into the upper arms. As you lift up, you're going to pull on the feet like you were going to kick yourself in the butt. So here's the same shape, but we've got a full body tone here. The arms are working. The neck is working. The legs are working. And then tuck your tail, keep that tone to support yourself, just releasing it slower and slower like you're unreeling a fishing rod, vertebra by vertebra, making contact with the floor. Keep pulling now on the feet, pushing out against the strap until you're back to that shape where your sacrum is making contact with the ground. And then you can let the arms relax, the legs relax, and let the body be still if you like. You can move if you like, whatever your body's craving. So let's do that one more time. And it feels like we're doing all these things. Like, how can I focus on doing all these things all at one time? And the analogy that, or the metaphor that I like to compare that to is when you first, you learned how to drive or ride a bike or a new skill where it felt like, okay, I've got to align my mirrors, seatbelt, ignition, car goes into reverse, check my blind spots, a little bit, but not too much, and hit the brake, and you've got to think of all these things really actively that now maybe are second nature to you with practice and time. So here we are again, triangles of your feet. Bending the elbows so the whole upper arm is creating a point of contact. Tilt your tail first. So just your tailbone can peel off the floor, push out against the strap. As if you had suction cups attached to your back, you're going to sort of lift one, the next, the next, the next, peeling off the floor as you push into your arms, into your feet, out against the strap, and finally pull a little into the feet like your knees are going to shoot out past your toes. Really lifting up, push into the shoulders of those arms. And now as you come back down, we're still going to push into the arms, into the feet. But now you're going to pull on your legs, almost like you were going to kick yourself in the butt. Heart to the floor, shoulders to the floor, upper back to the floor, really curling out, tailbone points to your knees, vertebra by vertebra. Let your back finish coming to the floor before untucking that tail. And find any movements your body might be craving. Now let's free ourselves from this strap. Gently roll to one side. Take your time if you need to. We're going to come back upwards seated. So you can sit, I'd suggest for this one sitting just on the one blanket or flat on the floor, but you can adjust as you need to. We're going to come to, sometimes it's called 90-90, sometimes it's called a deer sit. But it looks something like this, where I've got my left leg in front, my left leg in front. My left knee is in line with my left hip, heel in line with knee. So when I look down, I see a square or rectangle. My right leg, same thing. I've got a straight line from knee to hip and a straight line from knee to heel. For me, it's a lot of sensation in the back hip. So we're always looking for a sensation at about a 6 out of 10. So nothing that's bordering towards pain. If you're feeling more than 6 out of 10, I'll invite you to lean forward towards your left leg and moderate that sensation. If you're not quite feeling yet 6 out of 10, that's when you're going to start to sit up taller and taller and taller until it feels like whatever sensations you're feeling is about a 6 out of 10. Once you're there, you might need to moderate again the tilt and the lift of your body. We're going to start off with the back leg, so I'm going to lean forward for myself. Root down through the back knee and try to lift your leg off the floor without tucking your heel in. Try to just, so if I lean way forward, you'll see, lift the lower leg off the floor. So you're kind of rotating down from my knee all the way to my ankle lifts off. Even if you don't clear the floor, you'll feel the muscles engaging. That's what we're looking for. And just lean forward to help yourself. If your foot is lifting way high off the floor, then you're coming up to sit. And we're going to hold that. 3, 2, 1, and then let it come down. Unclench your butt, relax your low back, find your breath. Once you've located the full capacity of your breath, you're going to root your thigh and your knee of the back leg down and lift the lower leg as best you can, ankle up. 6 seconds while you breathe. It's only 6 seconds, I promise. And then lower back down. And now the front leg. So this is the part where I usually come off of a blanket because I don't like that tilt. Totally your call. You're going to lean back as much as you need to away from that front leg, or sit up as high as you can. Without changing the shape of this 90-degree, you're going to lift knee and ankle at the same time, lifts up for about 5 or 6 seconds while you breathe, and then lower down. And remember, even if the leg doesn't come off the ground, you're still building that capacity. You're going to feel the same sensation as someone whose leg lifts off. So let's do that again, taking a breath in and out while you breathe. So don't clench your breath. We're going to lift, and we're breathing in, breathing out, maybe in and out, whatever speed you're breathing, and lower back down. Now let's switch to the other side. So setting yourself up first in this 90-90 sit. So make sure your back knee isn't too far back, so that there's like, a 120-degree angle of your back hip. Try to make a nice sharp turn. Same with front. Leaning forward. Back knee down, foot up. Holding while you breathe. It might be the same. It might be very, very different. The breath is the same and the effort's the same. The outcome might be different. And then lower that leg down. Try to notice if there's a place where you were putting in effort that you didn't need to, like in the brows or the jaw or the shoulders. And then we'll root the knee down, lift the foot up. holding just for 6 seconds. It's almost done. 2, 1, down. And we're going to do the same with the front leg. So leaning back as much or as little as you need to, scooping knee and ankle up together, lifting off and counting for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lower back down. And then again, when you find your rhythm breath, lifting up, and as you breathe, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and lower back down. And then move however your body's craving for movement. You can move a little bit into the legs if you'd like. After a few breaths, you're going to find your strap once again, or your belt, and roll it up to coil it into a little ball. If that doesn't work for the prop you're using, maybe you're using a scarf or something, just grab something that's a pretty low height, like a couple of inches, like a little trinket or a cup, a mug, sort of that height. And then I'd like for you to set yourself up against a wall. So we're going to sit with your bum against the wall, keep that strap within arm's reach, and we're going to use the wall to help enforce the fact that we're not leaning back. So if you're someone who likes to have hips higher than the knees, you're going to have to make a little narrow sit for yourself. And the points of contact against the wall is going to be the sacrum, that part you were sitting on your mat, and behind your heart. Maybe the head touches the wall, maybe it doesn't. It's not important, but you're not flat against the wall, because if you were flat against the wall, you'd have lost the curvatures in your spine. So maintaining the curvatures in your spine means your sacrum touches the wall and your shoulder blades, like behind your heart, touches the wall, and that's it. The rest of your body, depending on your tissues, might be like close to the wall or barely grazing the wall, but those parts are like rooted. And then you're going to take your right leg out in front of you, let's say in front of you, and you're up to the outside of that leg. So I'm fixed to the wall so that I can't lean back. If when you go to do this exercise, nothing happens, you can't lift your leg off the ground, you're going to have to scoot your bum forward a little bit and lean into the wall, which is fine. We're going to breathe. So we're doing the same exact thing as deer pose, only now in the front. When you exhale, you're going to lift the whole leg as one piece off the ground and over your prop. So lift right from that hip crease off the ground over the prop. I didn't say it was going to be easy. If it's easy, you could make your little thing higher. You could use a higher prop or move yourself closer to the wall. So here we're really strengthening those hip flexors, and they need a lot of strength. So be conscious you're not caving at your rib cage. We're in the neutral spine, and the only thing that's moving is that hip flexor. Couple more times. Okay, now I'm going to try without dropping. I'm just going to like hover up. Oh, it's getting tired. Hover down instead of drop down. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So here we are again with that idea that the spine is going to stay neutral the whole time. Doesn't matter what your other leg's doing. From the hip crease, you're going to lift up and bring it over your prop. From your hip crease, you're going to lift up, bring it over your prop. And do that as many times as you can without curling your spine, without, if you need to bend your knee, you can bend your knee, but we're really trying to bring the effort into those hip flexors. Don't forget to breathe. Maybe 1 or 2 more times. And then we're going to come out of that shape. So let's make your way towards hands and knees. And this is a position we come to often in yoga, not so often anywhere else. So I'll invite you to move your hands to the floor and bring your bum back towards your heels. So if you see from the side, I'm not right above my wrist, but I'm behind them. And in doing so, the angle of my wrist is quite large. That's the place where you've got the most amount of bend in your knee, but the least amount of work for your wrists. So you can walk your hands even further in front of you and that angle gets bigger and bigger. You can bring your bum away from your knees. See all the wrinkles forming in my wrists. You can bring your bum away from your knees and you're asking more of your wrists. But for now, let's start back. We're gonna support those joints by externally rotating the arms. So I want you to broaden your collarbones as though your shoulders were moving away from one another. And then scoop something imaginary under your underarm. And then push just a little bit into the hands. So sometimes it's like imagine that there's a little campfire between your hands and you're trying to keep your face far away from it. And remember that a sensation is only going to be useful to you at about a 6 out of 10. So don't strain the back of your neck or your arms doing this. But in doing so, what we're doing is we're building strength as far up the arms as we can. And then with that strength engaged, you're going to start to rock your body forward and back. So we're kind of helping the wrists get a little stronger here. If your shoulders, the closer your shoulders move to in line with or in front of your wrists, the more you're asking them to do. And now this is going to be useful in table pose, but now we want to strengthen the entire joint of the wrist. So turn your hands to face one another, fingertips towards one another, and experiment with your capacity here. Keeping the palms flat, even on the pinky finger side. Keeping the fire sort of engaging the back of the body. Keep externally rotating, so collarbones away from each other. And the next time your bum is back towards your heels, turn them out as far as they can. Even maybe further if you're your thumbs down without surpassing 6 out of 10. And we'll keep this strong upper arms, increasing capacity in our wrists. Now come back to where you're strongest, wherever that is for you, and take one palm and flip it to the ceiling. And same thing. So now your one arm and your legs are helping to support. Then try to keep your wrists down and lift your palm up to increase that sensation. And switch to the other side. Keep your elbows straight, externally rotated, collarbones away from one another. Back to the first hand, now the side of your wrist. Judo chop. I don't think they actually do that in judo. Karate chop. Elbow as straight as possible. Keep that whole side of the hand down and then flip to the thumb side. So I'm going to tuck my thumb in, place my knuckles down, and I don't have very much mobility here. Most people don't. We don't need a lot of mobility there. Other side, nor do we ever use a lot of mobility there. Collarbones broad, other arm rotating, elbows are straight as possible, and then thumb tucks in, flip, strengthening on all sides of our wrists. And then come back to a tabletop shape. And because we come to tabletop so often in yoga, I'll invite you to find a very slight variation to your tabletop so that we're not just building strength with wrists under shoulders and knees under hips, but maybe for today your knees come slightly in and your hands move slightly out. See how that feels today. Or they move slightly away from each other or slightly to a V. Just experiment with a little bit of a variation so that we're building strength capacity through more of our joints. And then notice the breath. Try to neutralize the spine, external rotation of the arms, strong back, and moving the crease of your hips. You're going to lift your tail to the ceiling, tuck your tail to the floor. So I want you to push firmly into those arms. Try to keep your upper back still so it doesn't curve. Your neck doesn't move. We're just moving the tail up, down, up, down. And then try to draw big circles. So to the right and up, and to the left and down. Can you make as big as possible? Maybe it's not as big as when you move the rest of the spine, but we're working on isolation in one part of the body, mobility in the other, then change directions. It's also a lot of concentration to do that. And then take a couple of rounds of your cat and cow if that feels good, or big barrel rolls if that feels good. You push up into your downward dog or hang into your forward fold. Take a couple of moments to move your body how it's craving. Even if it doesn't have a fancy yoga name, check in with what needs a little bit of attention and very mindfully care for yourself in that way. In a couple of moments, we'll move into a pose of rest. So I'll welcome a pose that's called Ardvo Shavasana, or belly Shavasana, like upside down Shavasana, which you could try, and if it feels restful for you, awesome. If it doesn't, just leave it. But you're going to take your folded blanket and bring it to, well, it depends how squishy it is. You really don't want it like more than 3 finger width height when like when it's going to be squished and it's around like the center of your mat. And then as you come down to the belly, bring the knees behind you and let the thighs and the knees be really heavy. You're going to drape your, you're going to take your mic pack out of your pocket, and then you're going to drape your hip bones onto the prop, so it's like covering your pubic bone, and reach your belly button away from it, and then come all the way down to fold. So you can use hand, I'm going to be on my elbows just so you can hear me, but you can use hand on top of hand or fist on top of fist here to support under your head. Or you could turn your head and rest on one temple. If it feels pinchy where the prop is beneath you, just curl your toes under, curl your right toes under, lift your knee off the floor, and extend that right leg long so that you're really ironing out the crease of the front of the right hip. And then curl the left toes under, lift the knee, and iron out the crease of the front of the left hip. So you're really resting on your hip flexors and on your pubic bone. Lengthen the spine slightly as you come down to rest. And if it feels like strain in your low back here, just put another blanket under your belly. And as you breathe in and out, the intention is to feel that little bit of traction or opening or space right at the lowest part of your body, at the sacrum. The lowest part of the torso, I should say. It starts to feel uncomfortable. If you have your head on one side, you're going to turn onto the other. But really drop heavy through the upper body, heavy through the thighs, almost imagining like somebody could pick up the blanket from either side and you would just be hanging like a rag doll over top of it. Unclench your butt, your thighs, your pelvic floor, and welcome the breath into the back of the body.
continuing to rest in this way until you hear my voice again. Notice your breath and staying just where you are. Start to notice the sounds in the space around you, the humming of the appliances, the sound of my voice, the sound of the people maybe you're sharing space with, the wind outside. Imagine you could hear the sound of your heartbeat, the sound of your blood flowing through your veins, the sound of all the inner workings of your body, combining with the sounds of the outer world. Then start to move your body a little bit, very slowly and with a lot of support. Bend your knees, bring the hands beneath you. And as you lift up, try to lift, imagine lifting from your bum first as you lift up, and maybe into table, maybe into child's or down dog, maybe into something else completely, just something your body feels like it needs. And then coming back to the first pose that we practiced, coming back to your seated shape, like a little bookend, seated on your blankets, with your legs, however, neutral spine. And check in with yourself here. Check in with the thoughts and how fast or slow they're coming. Check in with spaciousness in your body as well as maybe areas that are still a little compressed. The inhale and the exhale. Your attention. Maybe take a moment to offer yourself a word of gratitude for having made time for this practice. And notice the place in your physical body where it feels like gratitude lands. Where does gratitude live in you? Where does it come from, or where does it nestle into? You could imagine that that a feeling could live inside of you somewhere. And from that place, maybe allow yourself to extend gratitude from that place inside of you to the other people who shared this practice this morning. And while giving out that gratitude, you're receiving all of their gratitude, filling back up and overflowing the space that you feel in your body. And once again, my name's Carly. I hope you have an excellent week ahead of you.